what an ass-kicking that was last night. Seattle thoroughly dominated the New York Giants, and you saw the difference between those two teams where last year the Seahawks surprised a lot of people. Last year the Giants surprised a lot of people. And going into this year, you thought there was going to be regression with the Giants. I didn't know if they were going to fall flat on their face or if they were just going to slowly fall back from the pack. Clearly, the former is that, where they are going to fall flat on their face. They're 1-3, and they're heading to 1-5 with trips coming up, going to Buffalo and also the Miami Dolphins the next 2 weeks. And you look at Seattle, week 1 was ugly. There was no doubt about it. They got just destroyed in that game up against the LA Rams. But ever since then, this has been sort of what you saw last year from the Seattle Seahawks. And the biggest difference is now that Seattle's secondary is really coming into their own with the draft picks that they've made the last 2 years, and just more and more praise is deserved to Pete Carroll and also John Schneider, the general manager. But we have to start with the Giants, because the big takeaway from the game last night is Daniel Jones is paid to be a franchise quarterback. And I know it wasn't an ideal situation last night, but you're at home. I know you don't have Andrew Thomas. I know you don't have Saquon Barkley, but you have to play better. And that line was atrocious. There were times throughout the game where you look at Daniel Jones and you go, wow, the way he runs, he kind of looks a little bit like Lamar Jackson. But then as the game does go on, you just see more and more of the same old with Daniel Jones, which when you get paid that money, you can't be putting the ball on the turf. You can't be about to get in the end zone and then just throw an ill-advised pass and get picked off when you had Darren Waller wide open and that go for a touchdown for a little house call for 6 points. Daniel Jones has been in this league too long to be making these same mistakes, and it keeps on happening over and over and over again, minus the blip of last year, which is an anomaly, where last year Daniel Jones did a good job with not a lot around him. But Daniel Jones just continues to show you more than not that he's not going to be worth that money. And it's impossible when you watch the game last night to not walk away and you feel bad about Daniel Jones, the state of the Giants, who last year, right, they were heading in the right direction. You have Brian Daboll. You have Joe Shane. Year one, they overachieved, but now they're coming back down to earth, and they made the risk this offseason, and they kind of had no choice, but they had to pay Daniel Jones, and now you are seeing someone who's paid like he's a franchise quarterback, but when you watch him throughout this year, the team is not looking like they have a franchise quarterback. And it makes me think when you look at the landscape of the NFL, because the quarterback money is absolutely ridiculous now. There are so many guys that get paid these enormous contracts. And a lot of times you're paying off potential. And potential means you haven't done it yet. You know, there are some circumstances where like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen, where you feel really good about the quarterback and you know that you have the guy and you have the right guy. But then there's other situations like Kyler Murray, where Kyler Murray had some good moments, some bad moments. I don't know if he's an elite quarterback, and Kyler Murray got the big-time contract, and I know he got hurt last year, but now he has a new coach. The GM that drafted him is out, and there's a ton of speculation, depending on where the Cardinals fall in the draft, if this is going to be the final season for Kyler Murray. And we've seen this before in the league, whether it was Carson Wentz, who got paid, ended up not being a franchise quarterback, where just because you're cashing the check, just because you get a lot of the dinero, doesn't mean that you're actually a great quarterback. And there's different levels of it. There's guys that are bad. There's guys that are average. There's guys that are very, very good. And then there's elite, great franchise quarterbacks. And when I watch Daniel Jones, more times than not, I walk away, even after being very impressed with him, with no one last year, where I just say, this guy just doesn't have it consistently, where he is going to be a great quarterback and a franchise quarterback to lead the Giants into the future. And you go around the rest of the league, and I started to wonder this last night, and I was pondering while the game was going on, how many franchise quarterbacks do we actually have in the NFL that are playing right now? Like, take Aaron Rodgers out of the conversation because Ayahuasca Aaron is currently hurt. But when you look at the guys that are actively playing in the NFL, in whatever order you want, we know the four best quarterbacks in the league are Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and also Joe Burrow. I know Burrow's off to a slow start. I know the Bengals, their offense has been anemic through the first 4 games of the season and very lethargic, but Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow has been to an AFC Championship game, and it's tough to just simply gloss over the fact that right now he's not 100%. But right out of the gate, when we're trying to evaluate how many franchise quarterbacks there are in the NFL, there's no doubt about it. Mahomes, Hurts, Allen, and Burrow are all 4 guys that got paid, and you have the actual belief and you know that those are guys that are your franchise. They elevate your franchise, and they are the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Outside of that, though, and this may be controversial, I think there's only 2 other guys that are slam dunk franchise quarterbacks right now. Lamar Jackson is a franchise quarterback. The biggest question with him, though, is can he stay healthy? But we've seen Lamar Jackson win a unanimous NFL MVP. Lamar is a franchise quarterback who also hasn't been put in the best position to succeed. Because that's a big thing when you have a young quarterback. Can you develop the quarterback the right way? Can you surround him with the proper offensive line? Can you surround him with the right run game and the right receivers in the passing game? And up until this year, the Baltimore Ravens have done a bad job surrounding Lamar Jackson outside of Mark Andrews, the tight end, with these elite wide receivers or tight ends. And Odell Beckham has been banged up. Zay Flowers is a rookie. Rashad Bateman, unfortunately, his first 2 years hasn't been able to stay healthy. And look what Lamar has been able to do with the Ravens consistently getting into the playoffs. And in Lamar's first true season as a starter, he did win a unanimous MVP. So I catapult Lamar into the franchise quarterback conversation. And the other name, to wrap it up to make it 6, is Justin Herbert. And I know some people are going to say, Zach, but what has he won? What has he won? And he hasn't been in the league that long. And Justin Herbert's stats have been phenomenal. And I know he has a good situation in terms of Keenan Allen. I know Mike Williams is out for the year. You have Austin Eckler as well. But I can't say that Justin Herbert has received the best coaching. Brandon Staley is a bad football coach. And he's lucky the last 2 weeks to get 2 wins with the idiotic decisions to go for it. 4th and 1 on his own 24 when he's up by 4, and then 4th and 1 at his own 34 when he's up by 7. But Justin Herbert has all the makings of a franchise quarterback, and he's eerily similar to Phillip Rivers, where you know he's going to go to a bunch of Pro Bowls. You know he's going to have these gaudy stats and these prodigious stats, but can Justin Herbert find a way to win the big game and be clutch, which unfortunately for Phillip Rivers, he wasn't. But outside of those 6 quarterbacks, Mahomes, Hurts, Allen, Burrow, Herbert, and Lamar, out of the guys that are currently playing right now, I can't say that the rest of the quarterbacks in the NFL are slam dunk franchise quarterbacks. So let me be clear with 2 guys. Trevor Lawrence is on his way. Trevor Lawrence in year 1 had a disastrous situation with Urban Meyer being his head football coach. But last year, he got him to the second round of the playoffs when he actually had competent coaching in Doug Peterson. I don't like, though, what I'm seeing early on from the Jaguars this year, where they could have sent a big statement going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they couldn't even get into the end zone. It was all 3 Brandon McManus field goals in that game. I ultimately believe that Lawrence will be a franchise quarterback, and he'll be the quarterback that he was hyped up to be, but I'm not ready after one really good year to say, okay, he's automatically in a lock of a franchise quarterback situation. The other quarterback that's on his way is Tua Tagovailoa. And Tua has to stay healthy, but you see what Tua can do when he does stay healthy. I know it didn't go his way up in Buffalo in Orchard Park against the Buffalo Bills, but Tua Tagovailoa has made some throws this year that are absolutely right on point and are like the definition of surgical. But then after that, when you just throw some names out there, I would say Matthew Stafford is a franchise quarterback, but I'm looking more so at the future. I don't know how much longer Matthew Stafford's going to play because the entire Rams organization, it feels as if they have 1 foot in, 1 foot out in terms of how much longer they want to be with the Rams, with their coach, with Aaron Donald, and also Matthew Stafford as well. I think Stafford is a really good quarterback, clearly a quarterback that could win a Super Bowl. We saw him do it 2 years ago and make clutch throw after clutch throw in the fourth quarter in those playoff games. But I just don't know how much more of a window Matthew Stafford has of franchise quarterback caliber play. The other guys, and I can hear the cockroach Cowboy fans now, why isn't Dak Prescott a franchise quarterback? Because when Dak Prescott has the ball in the final 2 minutes of a big game, I just don't believe in him. I think Dak is the definition of a very, very good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. And the last 2 years, those were winnable games up against an elite team in the 49ers who did not have elite quarterback play in Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. And Dak couldn't get the snap off 2 years ago. And last year, with this defense playing championship ball, he couldn't find a way to get the ball in the end zone, and he put the ball on the turf, and he threw the ball to the other team. So Dak is one of those guys that's just really good, but wouldn't be someone, in my definition of a franchise quarterback, where I would say, okay, Dak is an automatic lock for a franchise quarterback in the NFL. Kirk Cousins, very similar. Good quarterback. I like Dak more than Kirk Cousins. You know Kirk Cousins is always going to have big-time stats, but push come to shove week in and week out, when you get later into the season, you just don't trust Kirk Cousins. Jared Goff, another similar guy that has been to a Super Bowl. He has been solid. There's inconsistencies with Jared Goff. Sometimes he looks like he could be the guy, and then other times you're like, okay, I've seen enough. I think Goff is more of a good quarterback rather than a great quarterback being a franchise QB in this league. And the other two guys that I'll bring up here, that if you would have asked me this 3 years ago, and if I didn't put these guys on my list, you'd be like, Zach, what are you smoking? You know, what are your eyes watching each and every Sunday? But I got to see more out of Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson right now is playing himself out of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And for Deshaun Watson, I just don't see the old Deshaun Watson that we saw in Houston, where I look at him week in and week out and said, wow, that's a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. And that's just not my sentiment. I talked to Pro Football Hall of Famer Kurt Warner 2 weeks ago, and he said he's really concerned with Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson, and they're just not seeing the field well. So I can't call either of them a franchise QB right now. And then other guys, it's still too early, like Brock Purdy. I think it's more of a product of the system, even though that's not a knock on Brock Purdy. But I don't know how great Brock Purdy is, but he is in an ideal situation, and he's taking advantage of his situation. And even though I like what I'm seeing so far from C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson, we'll see what happens with Jordan Love and Bryce Young. A few games really into their careers as the starting quarterbacks, it's way too early to tell. So right now in the NFL, how many locked franchise quarterbacks are there? Clearly Daniel Jones is not one of them, and we saw that last night. But I think there's only 6 that are actively playing. And that's Mahomes, that's Hurts, that's Josh Allen, that's Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and then also Lamar Jackson.